Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Smith, award-winning director Brian Redondo, and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 45, and we find out if Eternals is worth seeing from someone who's actually seen it, and we get up close and personal with the raft of recent Disney Plus announcements. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund. I'm excited to get into this one because it's a movie that has somehow been a blockbuster hit that has received very little hold on the zeitgeist, hold on like social media. It's sort of just flown under the radar somehow, even though it's a huge multi-million-dollar production. Eternals released this week. We had all talked about, let's go try and see it. Let's go to the movie theaters. And then surprisingly, only one of us did the homework. And that person that did the homework was the person who never does the homework. It was Brian. He went to the theater. He saw Eternals. He checked out Salma Hayek and Paperboy and Laura Croft all in the same movie with Rob Snow. And it was, we don't know how it was. None of us actually saw it. So we're going to find out. This is going to be spoilers free since the three of us haven't seen it yet. And maybe one day we'll mosey on down to the theater or wait till Disney Plus. But if you're trying to find out, like, is Eternals worth it? What's it about? This is the place to be. It'll be spoilers free, I promise. So, Brian, just can you tell us really shortly what's the premise? The trailer and the previews aren't actually that clear about it, other than they're like some kind of protectors, and they were like, we didn't help when Thanos came, and that was all we saw.
Wes, before I get into all of that, I gotta say it's pronounced Lara Croft, not Laura. I don't think the Croft family would appreciate.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that open there, dude. Rob Snow? Are you serious?
I didn't have a Dreamcast. I didn't have the original, Tomb Raiders.
He said Rob Snow.
He did say Rob Snow.
Oh no,
Also,
Rob Snow. Rob Stark.
My brain didn't want to let me hear that.
It's early, bro. It's like 7:55 in the morning. I was up till 1 a.m. trying to feed a baby. It's been a night. I got up at 5 to feed the baby again.
We are committed. So if comfy, if you're listening, it's cold. We're getting ready to put our comfies back on. But also, we've our commitment level has shot up in the past year. So
much.
I mean, I was kind of thinking that Wes did some reading on the movie and realized that Rob Stark is a bastard too, so he just called him Rob Snow. So, I thought he was getting ahead of himself. But so, I mean, it's kind of weird. You're totally right. This movie has been out for 2 weekends now. It really killed the box office the first weekend, but it's kind of a movie that's under the radar zeitgeist wise. Like it doesn't have the wide chatter and gossip and buzz that Squid Game had, just a month ago. And, who knows if people are actually going to continue to watch Eternals like this the second weekend. Like we'll see whether or not it's actually keeping up pace with its premiere. I mean, none of us saw it opening weekend like we normally would for a Marvel movie. Like normally I would go on Thursday night, like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. trying to watch that. But I just went yesterday when I had some free time and I was like, well, I think it's time to go see Eternal. And the fact that none of y'all have seen it yet either also speaks loudly about what's going on. So the premise for this movie is basically that, yes, there's this big roster of brand new characters that most people have any preconceptions for. Like very few people know who the Eternals are. And they're all these super powered space beings that don't age, they don't die, and they've been on Earth for 7,000 years. They're there obviously for a particular mission, but clearly that mission has nothing to do with protecting the planet from the likes of Thanos or Ultron or alien invasions or anything like that. They're there for another purpose, which gets talked about in the movie. I'm not really sure if we want to go into that. I kind of think the movie is better served by not knowing very much at all about what they're doing there, and it's a better movie for it. I think like the other key qualities are what you mentioned, right? You got Jon Snow in it, you got Robb Stark, you got Lara Croft, you got Salma Hayek. Pick any one of her roles that you want to know her for. The lady in Desperado, maybe. I don't even remember her name. And then it's all held together by the Oscar-winning director Chloe Zhao, who made Nomadland, that won the Oscars this past year. So I think all of that combined is what makes the movie an intriguing prospect. And and so I was pleasantly surprised by my experience watching it, despite all the kind of middling critical reviews that it's been getting.
Oh, nice.
Oh, okay. So it opened, both Eternals and Shang-Chi had a $71 million opening weekend, which I think is pretty decent for what you'd expect for this. So it isn't getting good critical reviews. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think on Metacritic it's somewhere in the 50s, which not great. And by comparison, Shang-Chi was like in the mid to high 70s.
We don't need Rotten Tomatoes or A.O. Scott though. We have you to kind of break it down for us. So what's the biggest strength of the movie that because you seem to have enjoyed it, and so we don't need to pay attention. It's sometimes movies, what critics want and what they expect and what the movie audience sort of likes is different, right? And so that's why we actually go see the movies, even if critics, maybe pan a movie, or if they love a movie, we still go see it. And we're like, there were some things in there for me, but it's not
Especially
great.
when it's Marvel, right? Like,
big facts, Wes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can't listen to the critics. Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, they're going to rank Anchorman pretty low, but I think that's...
Anchorman was so good.
That's a gold standard for comedy, am I right?
It was so good.
The same thing applies to Marvel movies, I think. So you got to ask the nerds on this one. Okay. And so I think the movie is pretty good and pretty entertaining. And to me, the biggest strength of the movie is actually the core plot and the lore surrounding it. Right? It's it's a whole new direction for Marvel and where they're taking the MCU, and it's just like really cool and interesting. It's something I would not have expected, and this left turn kind of really grabbed my imagination, like just like white knuckled my imagination. It was like, think about this, and I was like, oh, that's pretty effing cool. And along with that lore come these characters, the Eternals themselves, and each one of them presents an interesting or has an interesting ability to match an interesting personality and dynamic. And then seeing those abilities in action in service of what's going on is just super cool and kind of and refreshing in a surprising way, because it's the MCU and we're like a bajillion movies in, and there's still room for surprises. So I was pleasantly encouraged by all of that.
That's awesome. So you kind of make me want to go see it more than I did before. It looked, because the trailers were just kind of vague, I think it left me feeling like, I don't know if they're going to actually have a good story there. But you feel like it was kind of undergirded. I like that word, undergirded by a pretty decent storyline here.
I don't even know what that means. Does it mean it had like nice 19th century underwear?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, isn't that what a girder is?
A girdle? Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Oh, a girdle, yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. It's like the trailers are pretty vague, and the reviews are not good, right? So it kind of makes you not want to see this movie, and that's what I'm worried about, right?
Okay.
It's just like losing traction. But I will say that those criticisms are probably fairly accurate, right? The biggest weakness of this movie is the fact that we don't know anything about this world, and or about this section or this corner of the MCU, and the fact that a lot of exposition is used to fill us in on what's going on. And so that results in some pretty clunky movie making, especially like in the first half of the film where, they have to introduce all these characters and what they're doing and why they're doing it. And that gets a little draggy, loses some energy and has some on-screen interactions that just feel frankly kind of lazy. But I will say those things get ultimately overshadowed by all the good stuff that I mentioned.
So
It's so
yeah, good.
I'm just like, it's so weird hearing the story struggles with this or some of like the character struggles. I know overall it's good, but what's Chloe Zhao, right? Is the director's name who did Nomadland? That is a big jump from Nomadland to to brand new Marvel movie. Like, and they've done that a few times, like Taika Waititi, namely
The Russos.
Yeah, but like even they kind of kept similar tones, right? From like the original stuff to this. Like when I first heard this, it was like Oscar-winning director. I was like, oh hell yeah! It was like Chloe Zhao. I was like, what? Like,
that to be honest, I don't know if this is where you're headed with this, but maybe Chloe Zhao might be one of the weakest links of this. It's hard to say like where her hand is in this movie. It definitely feels like an MCU production, like they churned this thing out. But her like signature stamp, I only know her for Nomadland, which for those of you that don't know, it's just basically like sort of a pseudo documentary fiction movie where she just follows Frances McDormand around national parks and in the desert of the Southwest. A very quiet movie, not a lot of plot per se. So yeah, this is a huge leap, right? Now she's jumping to something like 7 big screen actors and big cast, lots of lore, action. And it seems like maybe is a little too much for Chloe Zhao. I don't know, but maybe at the same time, I don't know if maybe she's the one that was holding it all together. It's kind of hard to say, right? Like, and the style that's in Nomadland, of course, is not really here in the Eternals, right? Like even in the way it looks, like I don't know, it kind of looks like TV to some degree. So I'm not sure what happened there, like what's going on, and I don't think, I would not say that she's going to be like the next Taika Waititi, definitely not, or the next Russo brothers, like that's just not there.
So does this movie end in a way that makes it seem like the characters are going to continue? And then second question, does this connect to the larger Marvel universe?
Definitely there's lots of runway for these characters to continue going. They leave a lot of breadcrumbs hanging. I'm mixing metaphors there, but there's a lot of leftover stuff, at the end of the movie and the epilogue, and like 2 post-credit scenes, or 1 post-credits, 1 mid-credits. And then of course, that there is stuff in the movie you could tell by like their art direction choices and certain things that you just see visually on screen that you can definitely connect with some of the recent stuff. You can connect with Shang-Chi a little bit,
but not
connect with Doctor Strange.
Plot-wise. Like cameos, or I know they talk about Thanos, but
there's a Thanos name drop. There are things that feel like they're going to be connected to the rest of the MCU continuity, but very little of it is explicitly stated.
I think it makes sense that it's a little bit exposition heavy and kind of clunky in the beginning. I mean, Justice League had that same problem. Even the Zack Snyder whatever cut still had that same problem, right?
How could it not be?
Yeah, you're just trying to introduce so many characters all at once and to like introduce their dynamic with each other, all of that. I mean, Suicide Squad had that problem in the beginning. The first one, the Will Smith version. Savon was kind of asking last night, do we have a reason to care about these characters? How is their dynamic between each other? Is it sort of like, does it gel pretty well eventually? Or is it sort of still kind of these hodgepodge things where you're not really buying in?
Yeah, I think like these big team up movies, right? They're better served when they each have like their own introduction, kind of the way the original cast of the Avengers was formed, or in a TV medium, right, where you can really explore each individual character. But so I would say the movie struggles with that to a degree, but the cast is so good, and that the audiences are familiar with the cast so much is that the movie kind of gets away with it because we know and like these people already. Like you know Jon Snow, Robb Stark, Salma Hayek, Angelina, even the guy that plays Gilgamesh. I believe he's the same actor from Train to Busan, the Korean zombie movie. If you've seen that, and then you got Kumail Nanjiani, who's always like fun and brings a lot of charisma, and then you got what's his name? Is it Brian Tyree Henry, the guy from Atlanta? Paperboy. All about that Paperboy. He's always fantastic in every role that he's in. So all these characters, all these actors are great to watch. And their dynamics between them, which I think is also very interesting, and it's very different between different sets of characters, right? I think all of that is laid pretty well and fairly early in the film, so that it pays off over the course of the 2.5 hours, which, by the way, I did not know the movie was that long until yesterday when I was looking up showtimes. I was like, damn, I'm going to have to give up like 3 hours of my day to go see this thing.
Poor you.
I mean, it's kind of too much, man. For a completely new cast, new characters, and all of that. But I think the dynamics pay off pretty well. And likability is there pretty immediately as each one of those characters is.
That was one of my biggest concerns, seeing Angelina Jolie in there. I was like, I don't know if she fits, right? She doesn't always have like the most charisma. She's often very serious. She doesn't bring a lot of like humor. But you can make it work,
right?
Yeah,
Jesus,
that is not a hot take at all. She plays the same person in all her movies.
You're kind of right in the Eternals, and her character Thena in the Eternals. The way that they make it work is because of the dynamic with Gilgamesh, right? Like that's how they sell Angelina in this one. And I think like she's not even though she's the biggest name actress in this, she is not the main show in the Eternals, which is kind of fascinating to me. I don't know if they have much more in store for Angelina, and so she's a little bit downplayed, and so some of those concerns don't really surface.
Well, one good thing, the MCU actually, I think historically they're pretty good about not just having a big name overshadow everybody. Like, they've had even names like John C. Reilly and Sylvester Stallone in MCU movies, and they weren't just there as like a shameless name drop cash grab. They just are there.
I totally forgot Sylvester Stallone was in Guardians of the Galaxy until you just said
Ravager.
That. Yeah.
There's a lot of random people who are just big names who are just there. So
Anthony really Hopkins doesn't overpower the Thor movies.
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker and Angela Bassett and Black Panther, like like they were a big name. But Brian, that's good that the biggest critique seems to be the ensemble cast part, because that's not really something unique to MCU films as being a problem, right? Like it's always been a trope in movies to, hey, let's put as many big names in this thing as we can, and everybody just gonna be gonna want to see this, and so that's not like a new problem people have. Like I think the Ocean's movies have that with them. It's not in heist movies in general. So if the biggest critique is, there's a lot of characters, and so naturally that just means lots of exposition, but everything else is still good, and the characters are good, because there's nothing worse than doing a bunch of exposition for characters you don't care about. So all of that sounds really encouraging, because keep it a buck, I was very neutral about the Eternals, because that's not really my corner of the MCU I've ever been invested in. But
yeah, same.
You've sold me. You've definitely helped. I was gonna see it. I want to see it, but you sold me on it more.
I was just gonna say, is this go to a theater or wait for Disney Plus?
Yeah. That's a good question. That brings up my comment. I don't want to oversell the Eternals. I will say that I was pleasantly surprised for a reason, and that reason is because I had a terribly low bar that it needed to surpass. You know, I've mentioned before how much I'm into Metacritic, and once I saw that number, that score, I was like, oh my god, and that's why I was worried about the length of the movie. I was like, oh crap, I'm gonna watch a 3-hour movie. Like, that's the worst feeling ever. So it was a low bar. I will say that the theater experience, it's not Dune. Like, I mean, very few things are, and unfortunately, like, this is my Dune chaser. So, in a way, the movie is disturbed by the fact that I just watched this like incredible spectacle and then came to the Eternals, which is nothing like that and seems quaint in comparison. So maybe, you know, in a way, like me and my family were talking about it, it's like, yeah, you know, if this were on TV, like on TNT, yeah, I would definitely like keep it on and do other stuff as it was playing and enjoy it that way. So yeah, it might be a Disney Plus kind of movie for some people.
But it is kind of funny to think of it in that context, right? Like, do you think they were pissed off when they heard like when Dune was coming out? Because it seems like this is like obviously going for like the big, like important, like godly, like that kind of scale, and that's essentially been undone by Hans Zimmer playing some music over Zendaya looking at a camera for 15 minutes.
Exactly. I mean, like, they don't have the recipe for epic down yet at Marvel, right? Like, where's Hans Zimmer? They need Hans Zimmer.
So this movie has movie has a 46% critic rating, and I also we can have this conversation later. I think like sometimes Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic can be kind of misleading because there's no consistent scale. All of that to say, I identify with these reviews quite a lot. I'll just read a few snippets, and it really does feel like this is describing me, so maybe I will like this movie. Eternals is a mess, a beautiful mess, but a mess nonetheless. There is a far more interesting movie under all that flotsam. In better hands, the movie could have been something special. That's one. That really speaks to me. Another one, we got John Wenzel at the Denver Post. Gorgeous and vacant. The Eternals is the most numbing entry in Marvel's 13-year-old MCU franchise, even as it struggles to be its weirdest and most philosophical. It's like, wow, I really identify with this. I'm gonna have to maybe go watch this movie now.
Both takes very accurate in a lot of ways, but yeah, it's still rewarding. I think that's the takeaway. Yeah.
All right.
It has an 80% audience score. Again, I don't know what that means, but
people who watch it like it.
Yeah, I like it.
Hey man, the action was cool in this, so that bumps up the scores.
The real last important question is, does Kumail Nanjiani take his shirt off? Because I know him getting jacked was a whole big thing.
I was waiting for that. I was like waiting for like the Superman ripping open the button down reveal, like massive cut up chest.
Are you telling me he's just jacked under? Wow.
And it's not like Brian Tyree Henry got jacked for this role. Like,
he talked specifically about how he didn't. They were like, "Hey, you don't need to lose any weight for this role." They were actually explicit about that.
It's like, "Hey, have some pizza rolls instead." The same thing with Gilgamesh, and who's like a beast of a fighter in this. He's still kind of like like a big dude, big tummy. Yeah, dad bod for sure. There's a scene where he's lying down next, and like Angelina is like hovering over him, and I was like, wow, the contrast could not be more stark. And so Kumail, I mean, I think he's just having fun with it. MCU footed his trainer bill,
and he's still about that life. Like, he still does all that shit now that the movie's done too.
I mean, more power to him, man. Maybe
couldn't be me.
Maybe he's in store for more.
I need to get on that Peloton life like Mike, man. I need to get back in shape. All right, last question then. No explanation, just what movie is this a little better than, and which Marvel movie is this maybe a little bit under? Where would you kind of slot it in?
I would place it a little bit above Black Widow and maybe tiny bit below Age of Ultron.
Done.
Yikes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we stand. That's how you can make your decision on whether you're going to fork over the $20 to go see the movie in theaters or whether you're going to wait for Disney Plus in a couple of months.
$20? Where are you paying $20 to go to a movie?
Well, in
New
Austin,
York
it's pretty
City,
cheap.
bro.
Yeah,
Is that a lot?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I guess
In
New
Austin,
York.
it's kind of cheap, and New Orleans, kind of cheap. It's like probably like 11 usually.
Yeah, 11.
Oh,
or 15.
$11? Go see it.
Yeah,
Easy.
All right. I wanted to do a 2-minute Dune update because it's only been a week. Mike was as excited and as nerdy and as incessant about Dune as he's ever been and ever seen. So, Mike,
Fuck you.
have you gotten further into the reading of Dune?
Yes.
And are you
yes.
still as hype about it as you were last time we
Yes.
recorded?
So I had jury duty this past week, which gave me lots of time to read. I am still very much into it. In fact, the book is improving as far as it goes along. New friend of the show, Richard Murphy.
What up, Richard?
Made a
It's your
good
fellow
point.
juror. Juror
Commit.
number 9.
No, just a friend and friend of the show. He made a good point, like when he was first selling me on the book and the Dune-verse as a whole. Like the prose isn't very good. Like Herbert's just not like an amazing writer. But
That makes me want to read it.
Yeah.
no, but I mean, like it's like a Marvel movie, you know. Like it could be dope without like being an amazing film. I think it's not that bad, but I enjoy it. The more I read, the more it makes me appreciate the movie more. Again, it is so helpful having kind of like the mental image of a lot of these things, having seen the movie. And then it's just, the further I go along, the more stuff I see that was cut out or changed, for the sake of time and for the sake of adapting to film. So like more, just a higher number of things I've come across. And then there's been some really big things that just weren't in the movie at all. So stand by my point. I think the book and the movie go very well together. It's because the prose isn't amazing. It's actually kind of like easier reading despite being so long, as long as you can get over like the hump of like there's an insane number of proper nouns, like everything has a name. I do not read. I am reading. So still is hype. I think I'm going to watch the movie again, and then I'm very excited to keep moving because I'm essentially still in the before the Harkonnens attack.
Dope.
How
And-
long is it going to take you to finish the book?
I don't know, dude. I mean, like, we should lead with, am I going to finish this book?
Spark notes.
Yeah. Bring out the
I don't
Spark Notes,
know.
Cliff
I-
Notes.
It's
Is it
like-
a
it-
doorstop yet?
And also, it breaks up into scenes like that are each their own chapter, which is, and they're very short because it kind of jumps from characters' perspective, almost like Game of Thrones. That makes it very easy to read because you could just read a few pages, get that scene, and then you can put the book down.
Our last topic of the show, it's going to be a doozy, I think. We were all a little bit excited, and I think I was also like kind of like, it's a little bit overload, but it's fine. Disney Plus Day happened, I don't know, was that yesterday? Friday? I don't even know what day it is anymore. 2 days ago. Disney Plus got a little bit extra. They just, they were feeling themselves this week. So they put together some clips to pat themselves on the back about how well they've done with, all of their shows, MCU shows, Pixar, Star Wars, everything. And they just kind of like unloaded and vomited all over us and was like, enjoy our excellence. So what were the things that came out this week? We got an extended look at Hawkeye. I mean, it was probably 4, 5, 6 minutes of footage from Hawkeye. First looks at the Star characters of She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, and a little bit of a taste of Secret Invasion. What If Season 2 was confirmed, Loki Season 2, and then they just had the title cards for I Am Groot, Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, something called Echo, which I have no idea what that is, X-Men, which they're calling X-Men 97, so it sounds like they're kind of going to reboot the old X-Men show from me and Brian's childhoods. And
we watched
Bro,
that.
we watched
and you
it,
guys
bro.
were like
What?
3 years old.
Weren't you still sperm?
Yeah, you guys were like 2 years old at that point.
So
like
y'all
5,
had to
and I
like get
remember
up and
watching
change the TV like on the thing, right? Like, do we even have animated shows?
Yeah, you do understand. Like, I know the theme song. No, don't disrespect me like that.
that
son.
one.
No. I had to light a candle and then do some like finger puppetry to watch it. That's how I enjoyed X-Men.
They used
That's how
to
you're
watch
so
it
good
after
at
the fireside
explaining
chats.
Yeah.
We still had foil on the rabbit ears at that point. And then let's see what else. We got Spider-Man freshman year, which I know Savon was a little bit excited for. Something called Ironheart, Agatha, House of Harkness, which kind of sounds now like
Harkonnen?
Dune. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Armor Wars and Marvel Zombies. So that's all the Marvel stuff. We did also get a little taste of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. They got Ewan McGregor to talk about it, and I couldn't place his accent. I wasn't sure if he's like actually Scottish or something.
He is Scottish.
Yeah, but it's not very heavy, so it was just kind of lightly in there. I thought he was from England, so that was surprising to me. I don't know why I thought that.
I mean, depends on who you ask.
Damn Yankee.
And it's going to take place 10 years after Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So that's kind of a cool timeline, or a cool time place for us in the Star Wars universe. And then the last thing that's kind of a small side note here is that some movies were put onto Disney Plus in an IMAX format, which just means that they're not quite as like skinny and wide. They actually have a little bit more above and below the picture. I don't know if that interests you guys at all. So
I have a great TV, and I still don't care about that. Like,
Okay.
it's a little bit bigger.
It is a little bit bigger, but it's not as big as like a TV show. So it's not like it seems big, right? Like a TV show takes up all of the TV space. This one still leaves a little bit of black bar. So it's not like you can get a bigger picture, right? Your TV stays the same freaking size.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't have a 50-foot screen.
Yeah.
Before we dive into which ones we're all individually excited, we need to provide some additional context. For
That
the
was so much.
Confidently Wrong
I
fan.
just vomited
That
all
is
these things.
it is kind of a lot.
You
Which
shot your Marvel.
which is Jesus Christ, which is
Bro.
probably going to kind of, we talk a lot about superhero overload in the past year. I feel like we've all finally come down from that, and now they're maybe throwing stuff at that. I don't even care about that context. What I do care about is the level of excitement Savon had for this. I've known Savon
excited.
Exactly. I've known Savon for a while in a professional, in a personal, and now in this podcast context. Savon is not someone who gets hyped about things. So we, obviously we have a group text, and when things come out, we'll put it in there and we'll, lightly discuss. And then if it's something that warrants more discussion, we'll do it in the show. For those of you listening, like, think about what Savon's responses are in that group chat. It's exactly like that. He does not get hyped. He is very skeptical of everything. I don't know, like, if the cold is getting to you, bro. I don't know what is going on. But Savon was so hyped, more than me. Genuinely, Savon, that might have been the most hype I've ever seen you show. I'm serious, like, number one. So I'm very excited to hear specifically, and I guess you can start. In no particular order, what are you the most excited about?
Yeah. I'm really excited for She-Hulk. I'm really excited for Moon Knight. I'm really excited for Secret Invasion. I think Armor Wars with Don Cheadle's going to be good. I think Ironheart's going to be really interesting. I think a lot of my hype stems from one, again, people know this, I love the source material. So these are characters I've read about for 10 plus years, and seeing them now with, essentially limitless budgets behind them is very fun. But one thing I was wondering if Marvel was going to handle or not was, when you introduce these new shows, it's a great way to tell new stories and appeal to different types of audiences that maybe certain movies just wouldn't do. Some people don't care about seeing an Iron Man movie, and that's okay. How can you draw in people who otherwise wouldn't be interested in this genre? And from the shows they've already released, they've shown to me that they absolutely can and will continue to do that. When you look at Winter Soldier, Loki, and WandaVision, all three, in my opinion, were great shows. I didn't like all of them on the same levels, but all of my peers liked them to different degrees. And that includes people who never cared about this stuff. So many people don't know diddly squat about Marvel loved WandaVision. And yeah, that says something. So I don't know, Marvel's shown a great capacity, even with What If, to be able to make stuff that can appeal to a wide range of audiences, even though it's all comic stuff. And I think they're going to keep doing it. You know, that's why I'm excited for She-Hulk, because we'll get like a break the fourth wall comedy. But we're still
is that what She-Hulk does? Because you wrote in your notes, you wrote She-Hulk by a mile, which is a very dramatic statement coming from you.
Yeah. So She-Hulk's entire shtick is that she's, Bruce Banner's cousin, but she's a lawyer, like literally just like a really competent lawyer. And I don't know how they're going to do it in the show, but in the comics, she becomes She-Hulk, and she's just like this big, strong superwoman, but without the rage issues of the Hulk. So she's not just there to fight the heroes. So just imagine a woman who has like big Hulk level strength, but is just like a really good lawyer. And
she's a girl boss.
I mean, I don't know how they're going to go about doing it, but her character is like a comedy. She's really comedic. She breaks the fourth wall. She's funny, and they pitch the show as like a legal comedy. To me, almost like a Harvey Birdman type show.
Okay.
Yeah, because so imagine, she's a lawyer, she's a superhero, all superpowered, and I think they do it almost like superpowered lawsuits is how, when they talked about it, that's how I interpret it. So that alone just means that there's people who are going to be drawn to that, and that's going to be hilarious. And some people who aren't going to give a damn about that. And that's good, because you're not trying to get everybody in. You're bringing in who you think you could get that target audience to be. I think it's a really good sign. And that's the stem of my overall hype.
I feel like when we started initially talking about the TV shows, it was exactly for that reason, right? Like the ability to have smaller characters, get more fleshed out stories with a lot of the Marvel resources. I just think like hearing you talk about this, the crazy thing to me is like, as soon as Endgame ended, they're now like just throwing so many new characters at us. Like I thought it was going to be more of like kind of like a gradual release. You get a Thor movie and then like another new character, but like they've essentially thrown out the first saga, like the Infinity Saga, and are just like vomiting new characters on us, which is kind of weird. And I don't know how that's going to contribute to superhero bloat in the next year, but I guess maybe now that I'm saying that, like if they're good individual stories that kind of do their own thing, then maybe that, like I can't see a legal drama kind of making me be like, oh, I'm so sick of superheroes.
I mean, no, I think that's exactly what it is. Sorry, I said my piece, Brian West.
I mean, Savon, I just love that you put 3 exclamation points in your show notes for what you're excited by, and then you just gave like the most calm, tepid response. I'm just glad that there's a diversity of content to appeal to so many people.
I'm trying to keep myself grounded, because if I get too hype, I'm gonna just go off the rails.
If it's just one exclamation mark, he sounds like Eeyore.
I'm waiting for that moment.
Me and Brian both had that like moment. We're just like, this guy doesn't sound hype at all.
No, I am incredibly
hype on the inside.
The internal hype is real.
But before I talk about what I'm interested in, Savon, going back to the 3 exclamation points, can you tell us why you put that behind Secret Invasion?
Yeah, so one thing I'm very happy with the MCU is that they've taken a lot of their really iconic comic storylines to where, as a comic reader, I'm like, oh, they're adapting this. But they have done a pretty fair amount of fake outs and modifications to where I know the source material. It doesn't really give me insight into what's actually going to happen with the plot, right? And Captain Marvel was a fake out. If you've seen Captain Marvel, the movie, it actually makes you think they're going to do the Secret Invasion storyline. They don't. And the Skrulls are actually portrayed as like cool and nice. In the comics, they're like straight up antagonists historically. And so Secret Invasion is fun because the Skrulls, if you saw Marvel, they're shapeshifters. So Captain Marvel kind of hinted at it, but if they're really going to go full send with it, it's a storyline where the Skrulls are just impersonating prominent members of the superhero community in like a deep cover invasion mission. And, in the comics, certain characters have been basically being, what's the word?
Like retconned.
Copied. Yeah, they've been being like replaced for months or even years for certain stuff, and it really is a big mind screw. Mind screw.
Good job. Good job.
Yes.
I didn't have to bleep it.
Yeah, it's a big mind screw because it just makes you wonder, what was actually happening with these characters? Who can you trust? And, if they're going to actually adapt this, especially with this huge cast of characters across these different mediums, I have faith that they're going to execute it well, but it's going to be really fun. If they do it well, this could be some Infinity level, like, man, people are invested.
Yeah. Battlestar Galactica meets MCU is something you would sign up. That just sounds crazy. Like,
the Cylons.
Can I trust this person? Is this the real Shang-Chi or the fake Shang-Chi? I don't know.
Quick thing I'll add though, Ryan, just to wrap up my thing. I'm always a fan when they do characters who are more grounded in their abilities. I think it's hard to connect to someone who's a literal god or just is essentially omnipotent or can't be hurt. So now that you have these characters who have their own screen time, like Hawkeye, who aren't being flanked by literal Norse gods, it does better for them, and it can help you take them more seriously.
Yeah. They can live and die in their own corner of the universe.
I feel like me and Brian are about to largely agree. So Wes, why don't you go, and then we can talk about what's really exciting out of all of this.
Sounds good. Well, I was actually really excited for Loki season 2, and I've talked a lot in our pods and our discussions about Loki, so I'm not gonna go rehash it, relitigate it, as Mike might say. But the fact that that's coming, I'm really excited for. I think they opened up a lot of cool things that they can do with that. And that show to me felt really inventive. It felt like they were committed to it. And they got the stories kind of rolling. I know it kind of like petered out a little bit at the end for a couple of you. But I would love to see what they can do with the Loki season 2. Anything you can put Tom Hiddleston in, is going to be seemingly fantastic. He's just really great at his role there. So that was going to be my thing. But now I looked up while I was talking, or while Savon was talking, Ironheart, because I didn't even, this is probably bad show planning on my part. I didn't do any research on who these people were, what these shows are going to be about. But the picture of Ironheart and what it seems to be is this lady named Riri Williams, who's just this young black woman who's probably some kind of engineering genius or something like that. And she's like building her own version of like the Iron Man suit, and she's going to be a hero. Like, I am down for a show like that. Maybe they'll even team her up with some other people, throughout the show. Maybe some of the new people, maybe Hawkeye, maybe Cheadle, as like a mentor, or Happy could even come in as a mentor. I don't know.
I hope Shaq comes in as a mentor and reprises his role from Steel.
Shaquille O'Neal.
It could be anyone. It could be anyone. She could even have who was the lady in WandaVision who got her powers?
Monica.
Yeah, Monica Rambeau.
Yeah, Spectrum.
Yeah, right. She could drop into a show like that. So I don't know. I mean, it's just pretty cool. I think also because she's a black character, right? Like, that's more stories. It opens up all these other stories that you could tell. Not that it has to be like a black story, just that it just gives it something different than what we're seeing in some of the other shows, like Hawkeye, for instance.
Then a rich guy doing rich things.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so
how do we not hate Tony Stark the way that we hate?
What's
the
like
Jeff
Tony
Bezos?
Stark.
Elon Musk.
It's like I saw this great tweet, and it was like who people think Elon Musk is, and it's like it has Tony Stark, and then it's like who Elon Musk really is, and it's that villain from the first movie who's just an evil rich
Obadiah
guy.
Stane.
Yeah, Obadiah Stane.
Well, he's like a Lex Luthor.
I feel like making a nerd show where we shit on Elon Musk is kind of setting ourselves up for failure, but F it.
Hit send. All right, so you guys can talk about yours, because I'm excited about this too. It looked cool.
So Brian, before that, Savon, in shocking fashion, Savon has 3 exclamation points. In not shocking fashion, you barely answered the question here. So you said all of Marvel ? And then you listed Miss Marvel, which is one thing, and then Lightyear, which is not Marvel at all. So before we go in and talk about the Star Wars side of things, are you genuinely excited for any of this?
I mean, you guys hit the notes before I did, and so there was just like, not a lot left to pick. Savon literally wrote every single Marvel show.
You could expound on that idea
in his list. So, I mean, I feel the same way as he does. Like, these are all great storylines. Like the Moon Knight thing we didn't even talk about. Like Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight. That seems super dope. He's like,
I'm tired of that man. He's in everything.
Him and Pedro Pascal are literally in everything. Like, they just take turns. It's like Dune, Moon Knight, Last of Us, Mandalorian, like Star Wars. You cannot get away from these two guys.
And I mean, with good reason, right? I think both of them are
they're
actors.
They are
right.
The average. Wait, never mind.
But kind of right. Like, in a way, I want to see some fresh blood on screen, that like people who become stars because of the show, not the other way around.
Yeah.
But Moon Knight is one of the coolest, like dopest looking characters in the MCU. I haven't really read a lot of Moon Knight, but it's just like a really dope character. Can't wait to see that. The other stuff that we haven't mentioned, like Ms. Marvel, I'm kind of excited for, just because that's a character whose home base is Jersey City, New Jersey, the great Garden State where I'm from, and Jersey City is a place where I used to live. Huge South Asian community, and Ms. Marvel is Pakistani, and she's like this teenager who, discovers that she's got powers and stuff like that, and it just seems like a fun, fresh, like teen show a little bit, but in Jersey City of all places, which is kind of like random and cool to me, at least. And then this Lightyear, not Marvel, not even part of Disney Plus Day or whatever this drop was called, but I feel like that's worth mentioning, right? Like, that was like a Pixar drop from a couple weeks ago that I think caught a lot of people's attention too. Like, just like what is the real world of Buzz Lightyear, who the toy was modeled after, is just like a freaking cool idea.
They had a show, huh?
What's that?
It used to be a Buzz Lightyear cartoon on Disney.
Did it?
Yeah,
but it was a toy.
Word for it.
It was
it
right?
was the toy. No, it was like, but it was animated, and it was Buzz Lightyear in the Buzz Lightyear universe. So it was him as like a star commander. They've done this.
I remember, with the Zorg dude.
Yeah, because Zorg was the villain in this cartoon. So they've done this before, just not in movie format. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Right. Yeah,
all right.
Lightyear seems to have more of like a serious take on that whole IP. So that's just like a bunch of stuff that's coming out on Disney Plus. All of that is well and good, but to me, the surprising thing, the thing that really caught my attention out of all of this, was the Star Wars contribution, Obi-Wan. And I'm kind of a Star Wars hater these days. But I mean, just like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan in that point of Star Wars history, where he's trying to protect a baby, an infant Luke Skywalker, that just seemed pretty effing cool. So Mike Smith, Star Wars guru, take it away.
So I am very excited for this. Here is why. I think that one of the most valid contribution or criticisms of Star Wars, kind of writ large, as it were, is that it's this massive universe, and we've essentially only focused on a 30-year period of time with like essentially one family, right? This does nothing to counteract that criticism. It's still the Skywalker saga, which I'm excited about because it's not, full sequels quite yet. So this show takes place, like you said earlier, it's 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. So, clearly Obi-Wan aged terribly in between episode 3 and episode 4, turning from Ewan McGregor to Alec Guinness. So we're going to kind of see him in the middle there of him, old. He's been on Tatooine by himself. The Jedi are way gone, 10 years ago. And it focuses on essentially Obi-Wan on Tatooine, being this hidden protector of Luke. I love that. Honestly, in between episode 3 and 4 is my favorite period of Star Wars that we have right now. And I'm really excited to see what it's like living in the Star Wars world as the Empire is a little more fully settled, but not fully realized as we see in episode 4. I also think, and I've said this, about all the, since for better or for worse, the great thing about, I think, the Disneyfication of Marvel and Star Wars is that they've seemed more committed to just, and I've said this a million times, just put the control, the creative control in people's hands that are passionate about it. And then that can end up with really cool content, right? Like, I'm namely thinking Favreau, Filoni, and Kevin Feige, and like what that's meant for like getting the Russo brothers and getting Dave Filoni to really have a lot of input. All of this to say, we're getting Hayden Christensen back in a show, Woo! Which is just like, I know Wes has the thumbs down, but like, it's crazy that we're at this point. Like, he is, when people think of what's weak about the prequels, it's Hayden Christensen is a huge part of that, right? Like, terrible writing, delivery, is trying its best in spite of that writing. I am so excited for him to be back in the show, not only because that means a lot to me as like someone that loved this shit growing up, but I also, we haven't gotten on screen a lot of really diving into Darth Vader as a character at all. And from some of the stills that they released from this, it does look like we're going to see him a bit out of the suit when he's still younger, because obviously he's aging, even though he's like, 3/4 of a person under there, still aging, which we see at the end of episode 6.
That was ableist as hell.
I almost felt like a 3/5 joke coming on.
He's missing. What are you talking about? He's missing. He's missing everything but one arm.
I know, but I think we all collectively were just like, he's like 3/4 of a person. Like, okay, all right, yeah, but go on.
Wes, you can edit that.
Is that how his vote is?
Nah, son, leave that on.
We hold each other accountable.
Apologies, I did not mean for that to be ableist at all. I literally meant that.
He's missing limbs.
To me, it sounds almost verbatim racist, but ableist too.
Keep going.
Yeah, I'm racist against people from Tatooine.
I am.
I don't know. All of this to say, it seems like if they can pull this off, it's almost like a passion project. It's something that's directly connected with what I think Star Wars fans as a large really love and missed, and kind of the place it occupies in the zeitgeist now. I think the Obi-Wan Anakin dynamic is so crucial, and to really, I think this show can do a great job of essentially creating that handoff to the original trilogy, as we're essentially saying goodbye to Obi-Wan and for the last time, because we know how his story ends in the next movie. And I've been excited from this from day one. There's been some production struggles, like there are with everything else. It's got the episodes got cut down from like 10 to 6. Like, I don't think it's going to be very long. But if they do this right, and Deborah Chow, the director, did a few great episodes of The Mandalorian, I have faith. This is what I've been waiting for my entire life. And yeah, it fills my heart with joy even talking about this.
He's beaming right now.
Glowing. Look, Mike, keep it a buck, bro. All I can say is most of the stuff you're saying I agree with. But I'm sick of the Skywalkers, and I'm sick of Tatooine. I'm going to put my head through a wall if I have to hear anything else about Luke or something on Tatooine, because that means we're going to have a Krayt Dragon or Tusken Raiders. I get it. It's
if we call it Arrakis, will
here.
that make you feel any better? If we call it Dune?
No. And at this point, I'm sick of desert planets. Like, all right, we get it. It's harsh out here. Jesus. I don't know. I mean, I'm hyped otherwise, but just the fact that we're going to have to deal with the Skywalkers more, it's just like, it's going to take a long drag on my cigarette after that.
The other thing that we're going to deal with is that basically we got another lone warrior and his little baby ward again. Yeah, it's the Mandalorian with the Jedi instead.
Yeah.
It's the Mandalorian, but characters I care about less.
You care about Obi-Wan less
Really?
than the
I like
I don't care.
Obi-Wan more.
I don't care about Luke.
But Obi-Wan is great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, Obi-Wan's
it's
fire.
Ewan McGregor, yeah.
I care about Obi-Wan the way I don't care about Luke. So it balances out.
That's the most Savon take I've ever heard in my life.
All
So
right.
it reaches equilibrium.
All right, I think we should cut it off there. Find us on Instagram and Twitter at confidently_pod. That's where you'll leave us comments. Leave us some reviews in the Apple Podcast Store. Tell your friends about us. That's the way that we get more listeners. Visit our sponsors. Mike, which sponsors are we having this week?
It's cold outside. We're going back to comfy, baby.
Comfy.com. Send us your money.
Comfy season, yo.
Bye.
They can really think that's how people, son.
No, we're going to get like a cease and desist letter.